Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Good to see you.
Let's start with Alexander II's family. Before Nicholas I, Rome, during all the Romanov times, from Mikhail I, from 1610s to 18, I don't know, 40s, 1830s, always there were some dynasty crisis problems because there were not enough children. But from Nicholas I's time, there were lots of them, and especially Alexander II had a lot of male children. His elder child, I told you, he died of meningitis, but the next one was Alexander, the future Alexander III. Then there was Vladimir, who would become the president of the Academy of Fine Arts. Alexei would become admiral, who wasn't really admiral, but he's just enjoyed the drinking parties with the seamen.
And with whom?
With the seamen.
Okay.
Maria married, I told you, the British prince.
Louder.
British prince. And Sergei was just a military, and Paul also. They were not so famous. But still.
Is he wearing a choha?
He's wearing a choha.
Why? Choha is for those who didn't see those who haven't seen many of my Georgian tours. This is actually the outfit of traditional male outfit in Georgian army and in general.
Those were the times of the conquest of the Caucasus, so that's why they kind of was union with the Caucasus, and that's why he manifested like that Pavel was also general of the regiment of the Caucasian warriors. Let's move on.
The warriors of the Caucasus.
The warriors of the Caucasus.
Okay, I got it.
So this is the whole family, but also in the later time, because we see here Alexander the future Alexander III and his wife, and this little girl probably is Nicholas II. Because they dressed boys and girls in the with skirts for some reason. Alexander had an affair with a girl called Ekaterina, Catherine, Katya. She was 17 years old, he was 47. And they had an affair. First of all, they had a fling, but then her relatives sent her to France, but he managed to come to France for some international exhibition, and they met once again, and that was it. And she became the lady in waiting of his own wife, and he started to live with two families at the same building. So at some point, Catherine Ekaterina gave birth to 4 children. 3 of them survived. Here is the photo of 2 of them, also with chocha, because that was trendy at those times.
I think it's still really trendy. I think so.
Well, not the outfit. And the idea was that he told his second wife Catherine that when his first real wife dies, he would marry her, and he married her secretly in 1880, 40 years after his wife died, which scandalized
40 days,
which scandalized a lot, and all of his family was against him, but his brother Mikhail always supported his brother Alexander no matter what, but the rest of the family were against it. And he wrote a will, and he left them 3 million rubles just in case. He knew that he could be killed, and when he
because there had been 6 attempts on his life.
Spoiler. I will tell you about it later. And he was right, and Catherine with all 3 children, they were sent away to Europe, and they lived the rest of their lives there. At some point, the money was over, and Alexander III told her that like, stepmother, I won't pay you any cent. Then I will publish all of our intimate correspondence with your father. No, 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 no. I will give you more money, told Alexander III.
And every time they would run out of money, she will be blackmailing the Romanovs.
Yes, and that was
Yeah.
Well, she gave some money to the charity, so she wasn't so like she didn't waste it all her money for nothing, but more or less like that. At the same time, Nikolai Nikolaevich Sr., one of Alexander's brothers, who was a field marshal during the Russo-Turkish War. He was the head of the cavalry. He was a good horseman, and he has like horse breeding companies. He didn't like his wife, so he had an affair with a ballerina called Ekaterina. Ekaterina Chislova was the one who wore pants in their family, and he did whatever she wanted. So he, at the end of his life, she sucked all his blood from him, including all his money, because he didn't earn money. That was the money that the government gave him, like 1 million rubles a year or something, which wasn't enough.
How did she manage to drain all those millions? Like, what did she do?
Those people of this kind of people who don't have money, they live every day as their last one, as if it was the last one. So that's why she wasted for the best resorts, the best jewelry, the best dress, the best furniture, the best. And they had 5 children together, and some of them survived, and they very difficultly got the title. But after the death of Nicholas V, Nikolai Nikolaevich, that Nicholas after Nicholas's death,
Nikolai Nikolaevich
Senior's death, his children were forced to sell their palace because they didn't have money at all. Constantine, another brother, great reformer, one of the judiciary reformer and military reformer, and the emancipation of the. He was also, he didn't like his wife either. And he also enjoyed Anna Kuznetsova.
Another ballerina. Ekaterina Dolgorukova was not a ballerina, but she was a noble girl. Mm-hmm. So from the School for Noble Girls, Smolny Institute.
Old.
Yeah. And from really old family. Then there was Ekaterina Chislova, ballerina, and Anna Kuznetsova, another ballerina.
Another ballerina. Also, they had 5 children, and also 2 of them survived, and also they got the title. But at the end of his life, Constantine got sick, and she left him, and he came back to his wife, and his wife kind of supported him, not as a husband, but like as an old poor relative or something like that.
Okay.
At least what was a bit of a comfort at the end, and he said he was sorry, but it was.
I'm sorry. Yeah, of course. I'm sorry for ruining your life.
During a lot of years, there were no wars.
For how many years?
For how many years? From 1856 to 1877, there were no big wars. There were like only the colonization. I'm not going to tell you this time about the colonization of the Caucasus and the Middle Asia. It's a very, very long story.
Yeah.
Eventually, all the Middle Asia became Russian, part of the Russian Empire. But it's an interesting story about the Russo-Turkish War. Before Russo-Turkish War, everything was okay with the economy. And the idea was to give independence to the Slavic and Orthodox peoples of the Ottoman Empire, mm-hmm. which was kind of unity and brotherhood and things like that. And the Russian generals were really real heroes, especially the general Skobelev, or even the great dukes, but it was a disaster because I will show you why. This is the battle. One of the battles. It took part in the place where Bulgaria.
Shipka?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bulgaria.
Bulgaria, and it was very tough war. They took by assault cities for months, and lots of people died, and it was very tough.
So they besieged many cities,
Yeah,
and then they okay, yeah.
Besieged, and at the end it was a triumph. But
at what cost?
But at what cost? And not only at what cost. This is the way. It's what big Bulgaria that Russia wanted to be independent, but it really that the dark pink that what they got. Because during the San Stefano peace treaty, Russia got a lot, but during the Berlin Council of the European countries, all the European countries proclaimed ultimatum to Russia that Russia cannot have so many fruits of the war. Otherwise, it would have been a new big war and they would defeat Russia. So Russia was forced to give up, not to give up, but to leave the original conquered territories, and Russians once again wanted to put a cross on the Saint Sophia in Constantinople, in Istanbul, which was about to happen, but it didn't coincide with the plans of France or Great Britain. And the results, I will show you the results in the next slide. Those were the results after the Berlin Congress. Partition of Bulgaria, a real independence of the Balkan states, which was good for them, but not for Russia, because it didn't affect much Russia. Bosnia-Herzegovina remained formally Ottoman, and Russia had some territorial changes. Like Russia kept Batum, which now is Batumi. We were in Batumi, and but returned part of Bessarabia to Romania. While Britain took Cyprus, and Congress reduced Russia's influence because it was a great war, it was a big victory, but the results were changed after this Berlin Congress, and it was 1 billion rubles loss after this war. It was a debt of so big after this war, and Russia was bankrupt after that war. So why? Russia didn't, nobody attacked Russia. It wasn't Russian territory. Why? The minister of finances, I told you about him, Reuter, was decided to resign because all of his efforts were in vain, had been in vain. Because he needed peace to fulfill his reforms. In 1860s, there were great reforms. I told you about them: freedom of speech, judicial reform, administrative reform, military reform, emancipation of the serfs reforms. But they were not completed, especially after 1863, after the Polish revolt. And some of the state officials told Alexander II, so if you continue, you will end up on the scaffold. So that's why Narodniks or populists appeared. They were the people who made propaganda among the peasants, telling them, you should have more rights. You don't have to pay for your own land to the government. The land belongs to you. Protest. But the idea was, if they were talking, just talking, it was okay. But if somebody made like a real propaganda for a revolt, the peasants themselves denounced on them to the police. So the Narodniks end up either in prison or in exile, or they were forced to leave the country. So it wasn't a good way for them. And then they changed their way of life when Sergei Nechayev, a student of agricultural academy in Moscow, organized a circle of interest of not liberal thinkers, but already a terrorist. When they got one of the first revolutionary organization, and they killed one of their friends who who didn't want to be so cruel and brutal, a student Ivanov.
So he were quite extreme. So they were extremists.
They were extremists. They said Narodnik. They were fluffy. They were mild people. Let's be active. That was the idea. The extremist aesthetics, extremist way of life, extremist. And of course, he was arrested. And in prison, he wrote his famous Catechism of Revolutionary, which influenced a lot on the future generation of the future extremists. Total commitment of the revolution. This day not the exister order. It was like they were like guerrillas, but with like a sect.
Mm-hmm.
And the use of any means, so the any means justifies the goal. Isolation from the society. They didn't have families, didn't have friends. They had only one goal: to kill somebody, like governor general or something. And of course, they manipulated of the allies, because there were like different levels of the secrecy. Some people knew exactly, some people knew something, some people knew a bit. They wanted to take part and to do something big. Of course, Sergei Nechayev died in prison. But this Catechism of Revolutionary became very famous among the Russian, let's say, not revolutionary, but all the people. Fyodor Trepov was in the center of a scandal because he was a governor general of St. Petersburg in 1780s.
1780s? 1870s.
1870s. Dyslexia. 1870s. And he visited one of the prisons and some of the political prisoners, and one of the political prisoners didn't take off his hat because of he was a general, so the prisoner was supposed to have his hat, and he was supposed to take his hat off, right?
Okay, yeah.
He did it once, but he didn't the second time when he saw him.
Okay.
And he was, and that prisoner was a noble. He was an aristocrat.
Okay.
And Fyodor Trepov ordered to apply corporal punishment to him, to cane him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was against the law because Alexander II abolished the corporal punishment to the nobles. And one girl, well, a young lady, who came from the exile, a political prisoner, who came back, Vera Zasuric, came to the governor general of St. Petersburg and wounded him with a gun because she was so furious about that incident, and she was held to the trial court. But as it was the time of the judiciary reforms, it was a trial with the jury, and the jury justified her, telling her that she was right, and the prosecutor started to have pressure on the judge, but the judge was didn't want to influence on the jury.
Because the judge is not supposed to influence
Because
jury.
the judge, yes, and that was very important, and that was a great shift of the liberal thinking at all. Tepev survived, Zasuric also survived, and Zasuric even lived till 1919.
So she was cleared of all charges.
She was cleared of all charges, and she fled to Europe, and she became not a revolutionary, she became a famous writer. She became a famous writer. She was famous, and at the end of her life, she wasn't so radical.
Okay.
She lived until 1919, so she died in Petrograd, and she was more Menshevik than Bolshevik.
Okay.
At the last part, because now we're talking about 1870s. No Bolsheviks, no Mensheviks, nobody. But that was the beginning. Dmitry Karakozov was a liberal thinker who became radical. And in 1866, he was a part of a circle of some liberal thinkers. They were discussing more or less, let's change something. The Narodniks, the populists, are not very efficient. Let's do something. And he decided to do something by himself.
So he took action.
So he took action. What did he do? Just, Anna probably told you about it. He tried to kill Alexander II in the park, in the summer garden, in 1866. Before that, all the monarchs were supposed to go for a walk, go, I don't know where, of course, without any security, because they were supposed to be the representatives of God on the earth.
I mean, they were considered representatives of God on earth. So who would ever want to attempt the life of a representative of God on earth? So,
and there are some versions. Some people say that one of the peasants
who just happened to be there,
happened to be there, took him by his hand, and he missed. Some people said that he just missed, and somebody wanted that story to happen. That the people from the peasants like helped his Tsar, and he turned out to be from Kostroma, as well as Ivan Sanin, who saved Mikhail, the first Romanov, and it was a great coincidence. And that's why and that peasant got the aristocratic title. He became a noble, but that's not the point. The point is that Alexander II realized that he was under a constant threat. Stepan Khalturin was a famous cabinet maker. He helped a lot on the yacht of Alexander II. So he was invited to become a cabinet maker of his personal furniture to the Windsor Palace in 1880. But he was a part of the People's Will, terrorist organization who made a death penalty to Alexander II. So he brought, it's a long story, a dynamite with secretly by pieces to the Windsor Palace and burned the fuse.
How? But by pieces, like
by pieces of dynamite. One one piece of dynamite,
like gunpowder.
Gunpowder.
Okay.
Which like special, and it was a great explosion
in the Winter Palace.
But they missed because Alexander II wasn't there. He was a different part.
He was late for lunch.
He was late for lunch because he was waiting for his relative from Germany, and his relative from Germany was late. That's how he was saved. People, some guards officers died. They perished, and but that was just another very tragic and horrible parts of the terrorist movement. People's Will was very handy organizations. They were very neat. They were very clever, and they organized. They planned this terrorist act, the last terrorist act, when they were following Alexander II and his chariot, and at some of the and Andrei Zhlebov, their leader, who was arrested, and they had a couple of days when 4 members of the People's Will had 4 parts of bombs invented by this Nikolai Kibalchich, by this man, and finally, you know that story. They threw one bomb which damaged a chariot, and another bomb which damaged a Tsar, and he died in a couple of hours. And that was a great shock. And the idea was, why did they do it? The idea was, they thought, if they have successful terrorist act, people will go out to the streets and organize the revolution. That was the theory. They didn't have any time to reflect. Is it so? Is it really? Why? They just had one idea, and they did it very well, from the point of view that they were bright people, but they had let's say, this horrible objective in their life. That's how they didn't have. Because there was no parliament, they couldn't discuss it, so that's why they tried to act. And Alexander II died. Alexander III ascended to the throne. Let's talk about culture. At this decade, Vladimir Stasov was critic. He was a literary critic, he was art critic, and he was a music critic. Music critic was something unusual, because the music industry, music education didn't exist
in Russia.
In Russia, only in 1860s, the first artistic society was created. But Vladimir Stasov promoted the Russian music based on the Russian tunes, Russian form, and that's how he created a group of 5, Mighty Five, and Mighty Five became one of the best and the most influential composers. Those were, there was Balakirev, Borodin, Q.E., Mussorgsky, and Rimsky-Korsakov. Mussorgsky and Rimsky-Korsakov are the most famous abroad and in Russia as well. And I will tell you about Rimsky-Korsakov and Borodin next time, because they had their major works in the reign of the later Tsars. But Mussorgsky was Mussorgsky died younger, and he was an officer. None of them were professional, and he didn't have much time of writing music. And Rimsky-Korsakov was more educated musician, and he helped him to write orchestration, arrangement. But he became one of the most influential and most famous composers with his work. For example, Pictures at an Exhibition, when he takes Russian folk, Russian popular fairy tales. And I want to show you the one that is now was made using the cartoon Baba Yaga, which is kind of a Russian witch. First of all, played by a traditional piano concerto. Let's watch a cartoon. It became popular all over the world, and in 1970s, progressive rock band Emerson, Lake and Palmer, one of my favorite bands, recorded live a concert called Pictures at an Exhibition, and it became a huge hit. So it was based on the Mussorgsky works, but in the modern instruments. Let's watch how it was in 1971. I visited a concert of Emerson and visited a concert of Palmer. Lake wasn't touring at that time. Now Emerson is there as well. Well, good memories. Peter Tchaikovsky is considered to be one of the most famous composers ever. And during that time, in 1870s, he composed music for his masterpiece, The Swan Lake. And every time when something went wrong in the Soviet Union, they put on the Swan Lake Ballet on the television. That meant some members of the political bureau died, and something bad is going to happen. Like the last time, it was in 1991 when the ministers of the Soviet Union held in Gorbachev in prison. But it's great. It's one of the part of the world culture, and let's watch the fragment of that ballet, the dance of the small swans.
Thanks. It was fun.
in 1860s, the group of 14 painters refused to take part in the exam in the Academy of the Fine Arts because they didn't want to paint the same old boring paintings dedicated either to Bible or to the myths or to some sagas or something. And they created a group of 14. And from group of 14s, some of they lost their orders that were given by the Academy of the Fine Arts. So they created their own groups. They started to go on tour, and they called themselves the itinerants. And like every second of them became the classic of the Russian painting, Russian fine arts. And now, if we tell about the classics, we tell one of them. I want to show you some of the paintings of those people.
And I've been talking a lot about the itinerants or the Peredvizhniki movement on my Russian museum course. However, tomorrow, when we talk about Konstantin Korovin, a Russian impressionist, he was not a member of this community.
That's the generation.
Yeah. So, but this generation continued.
Yeah.
I mean, the society, but he never really joined them. However, he participated in some of the exhibitions of the society. Yeah.
Pavel Tretyakov was a merchant who had extremely good taste and had a good was a visionary, which painting would become a classic and masterpiece. So he started buying the paintings from the young painters, and his gallery became one of the best in the world. If we talk about the fine arts of the second part of 19th century in Moscow. Nikolai Gué, like strange last name, he was the descendant of the French immigrants. He was the master of the historical painting, and it was a great scandal when he exhibited his painting called Peter the Great Interrogating Tsarevich Alexei by Nikolai Ge. That the matter is, Peter the Great sentenced his son to death. That wasn't an episode that was very popular among the traditional state historiography. So that's why like the censors didn't want this painting to be published. But it was published, it was made public, and it became a huge hit because it was a great problem, that because Peter the Great was a great leader, he didn't have any sins, but now we see, and this episode, because we see that Alexei is a real person, not a villain, and that was the point. Ivan Shishkin was supposed to be one of the top 2 or 3 landscapists of
supposed
considered.
He was considered, yes. So he really was considered one of the best landscape artists, that's for sure, in the country.
And why? The matter is, before him, all the landscape artists, they made like an ideal, glamorous painting of the landscape, and he painted it as it was, like a real Russian landscapes, although he lived half of his life in Germany, but still he even visited Sisteretsk, where we lived with Anna, but I want to show you one special very famous painting. Right, why is it special? Because we had a reproduction of it.
Cool.
At our summer house.
Oh, so you used to have the reproduction
yes,
of this?
It was always on my wall before I was born.
Okay.
And like from many years, we didn't have much interesting on TV, on the black and white TV, and
you're a dinosaur.
And yes, and if there were no cartoons, I could look for like minutes to see and to wanting to go somewhere, to go for a walk. What is the? I was shocked that it wasn't a photograph.
Yeah, that's really detailed.
1870s.
Yeah, that's not impressionism at all. I know that in 1870s already some really first steps of impressionists.
But nothing is interesting here. But still, there is a depth, and it was unusual for those types.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And Shishkin has a lot of more paintings. Ilya Repin is our everything. He's like a painter number one because he had a lot of different genres. And I will tell you later that my great-grandfather was acquainted to him. And like we supposed like number one. And he lived a very, very long life. But I want to show you one of his most famous paintings, barge holders on the Volga river, and it was cherished by the Bolsheviks. Of course, the poor proletarians, poor people, they need to work for their master, and look how bad they are, and that was very unusual and very social, very and it was very important to show that part of the real life, and Repin became very, very famous.
Interesting thing that the artwork was commissioned by Romanov.
Yeah, Vladimir.
Yeah, by Grand Duke Vladimir Romanov.
But later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Vasily Vereshchagin had an unusual genre. He was a war reporter. He was a war painter. So he was supposed to show the military glory.
And
military glory of the wars, but he showed it from his perspective, and he became very popular. And there were a lot of scandals because look how he showed one of the conquest of the Central Asia.
Yeah.
Apotheosis of War. So it is based on one of the legends of the Tamerlan, Timur, of the Middle Ages, but still he showed not the triumph of the war, but the destruction of the war, the tragedy of it. So it's one of his most famous paintings. He had a lot of very famous paintings, and he died in 1905 during the war, during the Russian-Japanese War. Leo Tolstoy didn't like to deal with the painters, but Ivan Kramskoy, I will tell you later about this next time, he persuaded him to pose, and Leo Tolstoy, who was busy with writing his novel Anna Karenina, said, but please don't, I don't want it. But when he saw his painting, he enjoyed it. And after that, there were over 300 different paintings and drawings of Leo Tolstoy. But this was the first
portrait.
The first of the professional writing.
Done by a professional artist.
Done by a professional artist. Anna Karenina is more famous abroad because it became a huge hit after the War and Peace. In Russia, War and Peace is more famous, and in Europe and now in America, Anna Karenina, because it's like not about the Russian history, it's about everyday life. It's a drama of a woman who loved, and that it was disappointed. It was a disappointment. She was disappointed, and then you know that she ended up killing herself. And the idea was that Anna Karenina, it was like a challenge. Like before, the novel could be called like Eugene Onegin, a man. And here, Anna Karenina, a woman. It was unusual for the 1870s. Like a woman became a protagonist. She became, she came here with her own feelings, with her own real problems, that her parts, that she wants to be happy.
So the entire plot revolved just around her own psyche, her own story, and her inner monologues, her feelings, and the way she dealt with people, and the way she dealt with what people thought about her.
Yeah. Of course, she's not. There are lots of different characters.
Yeah.
Levin is like Leo Tolstoy's alter ego, the one of the characters. But probably you read, or you probably watched the TV series or some movies. But
let us know later on if you have seen.
But by the way, this is Russian actress Elizaveta Boyarskaya as Anna Karenina in one of the later screen versions. Let's watch a trailer, not with her, but in English with Keira Knightley.
But it was not love. Your husband is a saint, and we must all cherish him for Russia's sake.
Romantic love will be the last illusion of the old order.
Have you known Count Vronsky long?
He's a rich, good-looking cavalry officer.
Dance with me.
I must warn you about something.
Warn me?
You may, by indiscretion, give the world occasion to talk about you.
This must stop. If you have any thought for me, you will give me back my peace.
There can be no peace for us. Only misery. My greatest happiness.
Oh, so this is love.
Nikolai Nekrasov, first of all, was a poet, but also he was an editor. He was a liberal thinker, and he was one of the leaders of liberal thinkers of Russia of 1850s, 1870s. And at the end of his life, he was editing the two magazines where Dostoevsky, Leo Tolstoy, Ostrovsky, Saltykov-Shchedrin, and other classics of Russian literature, all of them, they were published there. Chernyshevsky, Dobrolubov, all of them. He knew all of them.
Yeah, well, these names probably mean nothing to you, but just Tolstoy and
All-
Dostoevsky, I think it's
all
just
our curriculum.
yeah,
All
yeah.
our curriculum, it was Nekrasov. And at the end of his life, he became more philosophical, and he started to write, but unfortunately he didn't finish, a long poem about with one of the most famous, most important Russian questions: who can be happy in Russia? So this is a story about 7 peasants who are looking for happiness, and they interrogate different parts of the Russian society. The year doesn't matter, the land's not important, but 7 good peasants once met on high road. They met and disputed of who can in Russia be happy and free. Luca said the Pope, the Roman, the pomeshchik, which is a landowner, Demyan the official, the round-bellied merchant, said both brothers Gubin, Mitrodor, and Ivan. Pahom, who'd been lost on profoundest reflection, exclaimed, looking down at the earth, to his lordship, His Most Mighty Highness, the Tsar's chief advisor, and Prof said, the Tsar. Let's watch the trailer with some pictures that depicts their path, like from the, because they could go for a walk, because a magician gave them a mental piece.
Right?
Yes.
About
I want to show you a trailer of a book in Russian, but I explained you just with pictures.
Okay.
60-е годы XIX века. Крепостное право в России отменено. 7 крестьян идут в странствие по стране в поисках счастливого человека. Они встречают разных людей, от священника до солдата, но никто не может похвастаться счастьем. Кто-то радуется, что остался в живых на войне, а кто-то тому, что уродилась репа. Такое счастье по Некрасову мнимое. Реформа проведена, но нищета, бесправность и произвол остались. Многие крестьяне не могут отсудить у помещика законные земли, а кто-то так и остался несвободным. Ответа на вопрос, кому хорошо жить на Руси, Некрасов не дает, но призывает посмотреть на нужды простого человека, которые с отменой крепостного права никуда не делись. Дорога ко всеобщему счастью, по мнению Некрасова, лежит в преодолении эгоизма и заботе о всех и каждом.
Fyodor Dostoevsky wrote something important in...
Oh, hold on a second. So with this Russian language trailer, just a couple of things that's important to underline that I just would like to give it very quick commentary because it's in Russian. So basically, Misha has explained everything, but in the end, they kind of try to draw a conclusion that Nekrasov doesn't really give the answer, like who actually could live and could be happy and live happily in the country. But it basically, with all those stories of hardships, like for some of those, let's say peasants, the happiness was just that they had their harvest and they had something to eat and something to provide for their family with. For some, it was just they were happy that they just stayed alive at the battlefield. But many people were still striving, they're still struggling. Some people actually were still slaves, still belong to their landowners, to the landlords, and then the masters. And some people actually, people were supposed to get some plot of land.
They didn't belong. It was after the emancipation. It was, they had a great debt.
Yeah, so why they were, so the kind of technically they were liberated, they were emancipated, but they still had to pay for the land that they would be given.
What is 49 years?
Yeah, for 49 years they had to pay that. They just had to pay the money for their freedom, basically. So there were many things. So the reform carried by Alexander II were not perfect, but the most important thing from that book is that it was vital to pay attention to the hardships of ordinary people, because they did not disappear. Even though the slavery of serfdom was abolished, the people didn't go anywhere, and their lives, I would say, by and large, didn't really become much better. So that was important. And actually, because of this ignorance of that issue, all these problems will be building up, piling up, and this is also why the revolution actually happened several decades later. I just wanted to draw this very important conclusion. Since it was in Russian, I thought it was important to comment on that. Dostoevsky.
And now Dostoevsky, the last book, Dostoevsky was impressed very much with this assassination of the student Ivanov I told you about by Sergei Nechayev, who wrote the Catechism of the Revolutionary. So he was under impression. He wrote his great novel called The Demons or the Devils, which had some very important points. It's a story about the revolutionary movement, extremists, how disgusting were the people. Dostoevsky became very conservative, very traditional, but he shows from the moral point of view how immoral those people are. So he shows the political radicals, and he shows the moral crisis of the extremist movement, of the liberal thinkers, and he writes about the psychological complexity of the inner world, which was a breakthrough in the world literature of those times. And she shows the difference between tradition and modernity. Of course, he's supporting tradition because he sees a threat in the modernity, but there wasn't a way out of that. And authoritarianism, of course, he is better than the revolution violence, according to him. It's not like, because Dostoevsky started as a liberal thinker, but at the end of his life, he became very conservative, and so he was his wife. His wife, Anna, was younger than him, and at the end of her life, in 1910s, she was one of the members of the board of the Black 100, of the nationalist, of the chauvinist. Черносотенцы.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of Dostoevsky, you know, Oleg, my videographer and a good friend, who's filmed so many palaces for us. And well, you know, now, just yesterday, I launched my new series of tours on Anichkov Palace, the Romanov residence. So along with all those palaces, I also asked Oleg to film the apartment and museum of Fyodor Dostoevsky. And we will be going there in October, sometime in between my Halloween tours, my birthday tours, my cooking tours, all of which will be scheduled a little bit later. But well, October is going to be quite busy, I would say, and lots of events. Like next weekend, we're planning something different. We're hoping to travel and hoping to live stream from this secret location. Sorry, just had to use this opportunity. What is that?
It's just a trailer of the Demons novel, and that's it. That will be the finish.
Okay.
Хотели показать, что мы с голоду.
Без Бога в душе, без любви в сердце.
У меня уже давно появилась мысль, что у вас что-то есть на душе. Ужасное.
Они хотят великих потрясений.
Ну, я этих листов вам сколько угодно натаскаю.
Они жаждут разрушить старый мир до основания.
Теперь одно, все ваша полная воля. Рабами вашими станут.
Неужели вам никого не жаль? Мастера провокаций. Демоны кровавой смуты.
А можно веровать в беса, не веруя в Бога? Мы пустим легенды, мы провозгласим разрушение. Раскачка такая пойдет, которой мир еще не видал.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for your support. And I'll see you in 20 minutes in the Sea of Galilee. Bye-bye.